Mr. Kabir Bedi, welcome back on Bollywood Hungama at this very special exclusive launch of Stories I Must Tell, the emotional life of an actor, your autobiography. Congratulations, first of all, sir.
Thank you very much for that, Faridoon. Enjoyed our last chat too. I hope you enjoyed this one too.
We've been getting an outstanding response for our last conversation, sir. And I'm sure that you must have interacted with quite a few people who have already read your book within the media. And the journal impressions are already coming out. People are absolutely loving your wonderful journey. What have been your feedback itself? What is it that you've been hearing from people?
I've been getting wonderful feedback, and it's really so gratifying that after writing so intensely and passionately, that finally the book that I've written is touching people in some way. It's evoking responses from them. Of course, it's the greatest satisfaction that a writer can have is to have that kind of response. But I did notice in the media that they tended to focus a lot on the Parveen Babi and Pratima Bedi angles, because that's where they figured were familiar names and they would talk about it at great length, etc. And I felt that, yes, that's true. It's there. I've written about it. But they are just 2 chapters in my book. And I have many chapters in my book and many stories in my book. And my life story is far larger than just Parveen Babi and Pratima Bedi. There were wonderful parts of my life. But the larger story is one of a Delhi boy who interviewed the Beatles, was disillusioned by All India Radio, how he came to Bombay, what happened in advertising, in theater, in film, going to Italy, going to Hollywood. That's the larger story. And the other thing, of course, is that while I can tell you the broad contours of what happened, there is no way in which you can understand or feel what the book is unless you read it, because I walk you through the thing. I don't tell, I show. So when I go through emotional experiences, you see that pulse beat by pulse beat. It's not just a general statement. So that experience will only come to the reader. And it sort of gets minimized when you talk of it in general terms, as they have in some of the media. But I'm very grateful for the amount of media attention it's got. I'm very grateful.
Right. And so people within the film industry, they are responding very, very positively. If you can share a few thoughts from any of your friends, and what is it that they are saying, both in India as well as abroad?
Well, you know, the book hasn't actually formally been released. It's just been sent to a few people. And so the comments I have been from people that have managed to read it, or people that have received the book and have glanced through it. The response is very positive. It's immensely gratifying for me as a writer, as a person who's written out his life, who's laid down all the triumphs and tragedies and milestones I achieved and the mistakes I made. All those things are laid out. And I think people somewhere have been touched by the honesty with which I've said this, laid myself bare, bared my soul in the process of writing this book, and shared so much of that, the joys, the agonies, and the ecstasies of my journey with them so intimately.
So, Bedi, I believe you have a very special guest today that you would want to introduce.
It is my pleasure to welcome a star who has dazzled the world from Bollywood to Hollywood, a woman who has made India proud, a woman who has won the Miss World title for India, a National Film Award, 5 Filmfare Awards, and listed by Forbes magazine as among the 100 most powerful women, by Time magazine as the 100 most influential women, a woman who's been my friend since her debut film in Bollywood, The Hero, The Story of a Spy. I welcome my friend and India's biggest international star, Priyanka Chopra.
Oh, wow. Thank you. Didn't have to recite all of that, but thank you so much.
It's important to remind people of all the things you've done. And this isn't even, this is just the surface. There's so much more you've done in your life and your career that I'm glad you wrote a book about it, because there's no other way people would know everything you've done. And I'm so glad that apart from writing your book, you found time to read my book too, which makes me very, very happy.
I have, and I have it right here for everyone to see. First of all, I mean, this picture, amazing. My mom, just for people who are watching who would not know, is the hugest Kabir Bedi fan, the hugest. Since she
Thank
was
you.
19 years old, she had a huge poster of him when she was growing up. And I remember when I first signed up Hero, she was not excited about the fact that I signed this movie with Sunny Deol. It was Anil Sharma after Gadar. She was most excited about the fact that I was working with you. So
That's so lovely to hear. So
thank
lovely
you
to
for
hear.
being one of my first co-actors. You've had such an incredibly prolific life, and I agree with the title of this book that these are stories that you must tell. And you know, you've experienced so much of life in the span of a professional and personal existence that you've had for so long, and there's so much that we can learn through it. If you don't mind, for people who are going to see this book, and everybody must read it, I will get into asking you questions, but we should launch your book, shouldn't we?
Launch the book, Priyanka. This is
Ladies and
a book.
gentlemen, this is Stories I Must Tell by the incredible Kabir Bedi, who has had an amazing life. He was one of the first actors to actually transcend beyond India into the world and seek work in America and in Hollywood and outside of India, and was very successful at it. So you really paved the way for people like me. And this book is an amazing read, and I would really recommend it to everyone to go grab it.
Both hold it up together. Let's both hold it up together. Yay! That's what we want. That's the shot.
And it's launched.
And thank you. Thank you so much.
Buy the book wherever books are sold.
Thank you for saying that, Priyanka. Coming from you, I can't tell you how happy it makes me that you're doing this for me and honoring our friendship, our relationship, and our mutual support for each other over these years. It feels it's a very special moment in my life. Thank you for that, Priyanka. Thank you.
Of course, I'm always here.
And you're right. I did set off for India at that time. I was probably the first Bollywood actor that made a career and a home in Hollywood. But it was tough going those days, tough going.
Tell me what
Because
was
even,
hard about it. Because I want to understand compared to, because for me also it was very difficult as an Indian seeking work in Hollywood per se.
right.
But when you did it with such aplomb. You were one of the first people. What was it like at that time?
Well, I did it with a lot of aplomb. I had stardom in Europe behind me as I was the rage across the continent. I came to Hollywood as a newcomer. I thought they'd be impressed by that. They didn't know, they didn't care. I lived in a house in Beverly Hills. I bought myself a Mercedes. Nobody gave a damn. I got Rogers and Cowan, the best PR firm in the world, working for me. I had William Morris and Rick Nacita at William Morris at that time working for me. Not a dent. So the problem was that in those days, Hollywood just wasn't writing roles for Indians or Asians in general. And so how do you get a role if it's not written for you? And I would protest in the trade papers saying that this is wrong. And when they did have a role for an Asian, they had no hesitation in painting a white actor brown and giving him the role. So this was the other problem. So the way I got roles was by telling my agent, look, forget the Indian bit. Cast me in anything that's foreign looking to Hollywood, because everything was foreign is in one broad brushstroke for them. And that's how I got my roles. In the James Bond film, I was actually cast as an Indian. But in Ashanti with Michael Caine, I played a Tuareg tribesman. In The Bold and Beautiful, I played a Moroccan prince. So it was playing the foreign tag that got me the roles. And these are all things that make a huge difference. In those days, Ben Kingsley had to change his name from Krishna Bhanji to Ben Kingsley to be taken seriously and get roles. Today, a Priyanka Chopra does not have to change her name to have success in America.
But let me tell you, this is however many years later, a couple of decades later, when I decided to go and seek work in America. And I didn't have to change my name, but I had to teach people how to say my name, first of all, because everybody was Priyanka Chopra. It's not Chopra. It's like, if you can say Oprah, you can say Chopra. It's not
Right,
very difficult.
right.
But what I had to do as well, which is so funny that you're saying you had to do at that time, was I had to be ethnically ambiguous to a certain
Yes,
extent to be able to get mainstream roles. For me
right.
to get mainstream roles, like even Quantico for that matter, I played a half Indian, half American. Baywatch, like all my bigger work initially when I first joined Hollywood, I couldn't step out there with being Indian because it was too alien for Hollywood. I don't think for a very long time they understood casting an Indian person in a mainstream role as a leading part. So even now, it was extremely hard. Once I got their attention, playing an
Yes.
ethnically ambiguous role, now I am getting the chance to do Indian, like play Indian characters, like the White Tiger or my movie with Mindy. But it's an education that is a consistent requirement, and it's my life's dream, honestly, to see a lot more Indians influx Hollywood because we have one of the largest film industries in the world. We are literally
We do, we do,
trained.
we do. And but fortunately, by the same measure, a lot of Indians have made waves
Totally.
in the West, and that gives me great joy because that was
Me too.
unthinkable at that time. The nature of Hollywood has always been a bit insular, but it was far more so in those days. So I
Absolutely, I
must,
can imagine.
so I mean, you've seen the difficulties of getting into Hollywood, even coming at your level. Um, I faced twice that. And I must say, I have to thank Hollywood for giving me vast global fan bases by, Bold and Beautiful gets 400 million people watching a day. A Bond film is the longest running film franchise in history. It has fan clubs, merchandise, conventions, everything around it. And as you've seen from Quantico, the power of television is absolutely enormous, especially when it goes global,
Huge.
and huge, huge. So I have to thank America for that. Even though my journey was probably harder than than yours has been, although I don't know the inside story, maybe you can enlighten us. But there is the good thing is my son is there in Los Angeles. Adam, he's flying the Bedi flag, doing special effects, and very successful at that. But really speaking, with these changing times, to see you up there is it just fills me with joy and glory. And I think you should be in a Bond film too. I think they should
I think I
call on
should
you.
play Bond.
You should play Bond. You should play Bond. Although Her Majesty's Secret Service, yes, also must insist on diversity. Uh,
Just a joke. I don't know if in our lifetime we'll see that. But listen, thank you for being so kind. But if you don't mind, I would love to sort of delve into, Kabir Bedi, the person, like what you talk about in your book, which is what moved me the most is, you've talked about some really difficult things in your book which people may
mhm.
know of because you're a public person and there's so much written about you and speculated about you, of course. But you've spoken very candidly in your book about, your marriages and specifically your son's death. That chapter really, really moved me when I was reading that. And was it hard to, you know like having speculated, having had so much speculation, and of course you got ahead of it and made a statement when it happened. Um, but is it hard to remember something like that all over again and, actually write it down?
Priyanka, firstly, the difficulty of actually having lived that situation and tried your best to pull him back from the brink and dealing with a person with schizophrenia. To go back and relive that is
Mm.
also cathartic because I actually have to remember a lot of things. I was lucky in one sense that I kept a lot of notes of those days, what happened in those days. So a lot of those things came back. But while writing it, to go through the emotions of every scene that happened was extremely, extremely moving. It brings you to tears again, because it brings back memories that were very wounding at the time. And in a situation like that, the pain of the wounds recedes, but the scars remain, and and what is done to your psyche remains. So yes, it's not easy to revisit those things, but I felt, firstly, to share my own experience, but secondly also to promote a greater sense of tolerance for people's families that suffer from, who are dealing with patients that suffer from schizophrenia and other mental illnesses. There's a lot of stigma in India. I
Massive
think,
stigma.
people should see things with more compassion. That's one of the other reasons that I wrote this. I have tried to be as honestly open as I can in sharing my experiences of relationships and people that are known in in the wider world. And I did so with great depth because, as you see in my style of writing, I prefer to show, not tell. I actually re-evoke the scenes that happen, so you
It's very
feel it.
visual, actually, when you read your book, and it's something that I kind of did with mine. And I think maybe we are actors, so we think visually. So when
Yes,
you end up writing like a scene. This is what happened.
yeah,
So your reader is actually, I could sense the room that I was in when you were writing it,
mhm,
and having a that's my favorite kind of book, is when it feels visually, it like sucks you in, and that you really
yeah,
do that with your writing in your book. You mentioned a lot about spirituality too, and I know, of course, your mother, being who she is, and being, the Buddhist and at the highest position in Buddhism. um, how is spirituality, like, what is your relationship with spirituality since you were younger, since you were 19 and interviewed the Beatles? Like, we have to talk about that also. But from then to now, how has your relationship with spirituality changed?
Priyanka, spirituality has always been a part of my life because my father is a descendant of Guru Baba Nanak, and my mother was a person who was always seeking. And I was part of her journey when she discovered Buddhism. In fact, in the earliest years, I went to Burma and became a Buddhist monk. Um, and those influences, and then the Hindu ethos of our country is also something that deeply influences me. But I was always spiritually curious. So I would go to the New Age gurus, the Jiddu Krishnamurtis, the Oshos, the Deepak Chopras, and listen to what they had to say, and many other New Age philosophers, trying to find out what is the truth. Somebody
Mm.
says there's reincarnation, somebody says there's not, somebody says there's hell, somebody says there's not, somebody says there's destiny, somebody says there's free will. Um, Somebody says one God, many gods. Who's telling us the truth? And that's been a running theme throughout my life and my search to find out what really is, for me, the truth that resonates. And I've shared my conclusions in the book in terms of what I've arrived at right now. I won't give that away because firstly, it's too long to explain. And secondly, you got to
Yes, it
read the
must
book to
be
see it.
read to understand it, actually. It's
Right.
very spoken, you've spoken about it really in depth. And I have, I think about that a lot as well, like what really is the truth, and what different religions teach us, and the fact that eventually they all meet at the same place. And that's really what faith is. But
Right.
I was very curious when I read your conclusions, and I would recommend that to everyone out there as well.
Thank you.
But
Thank you.
tell me, being a biracial kid, what was that like in your childhood? You know?
I never had the sense of biraciality. I always sensed I was Indian because my mother was so Indian. From
Right.
the day she got married, she never wore Western clothes. She completely adopted India with her heart. And in fact, there's a beautiful letter that she wrote my father's brother when he opposed the marriage. And that brings tears to your eyes because that shows the commitment she has to India. And it's a tremendously poetic letter. Um, this was a woman who was Gandhi and Satyagrahi. This was a woman who lost a son because of the pressures and problems of living through the freedom struggle with no money. So religion in all forms has always been a very important part of my life. I don't say I belong to any particular religion, but I have taken much from many. I've taken much from many. And that's part of my journey, which I've shared. But let me talk about your book too at this point. Let me say, what does it feel like to be on the New York Times bestseller list?
It was mad. It was mad. When I got that call, I was like, and it happened in just a few days, in less than a week. And I remember I was so nervous about writing the book, Kabir sir, because I've always wanted to write. Writing is something I find very fascinating. I'm a voracious reader. I consume a lot of writing, but writing myself had always scared me. And to get that kind of acceptation for people actually to really enjoy the book and the writing of it, not just, I guess the celebrity of it all. I really appreciated that. It was really a dream come true for me. So thank you.
So, when you write your next book, are you going to title it "Still Not Finished"?
I hope I'm not finished till the end of my
No,
life.
still not finished. Still not
Yeah,
finished.
yeah,
So,
probably.
what I found very fascinating in your book was that this whole journey of coming into showbiz began with your brother suggesting you enter the beauty pageant because he wanted a room in the house for himself. And that's
He's
how
so
the whole journey
ingenious.
began that led you into becoming Miss World, that led eventually to films in Bollywood, which eventually took you to Hollywood. But all started with your brother's desire for a room.
Yeah, it's
I
so
found that
funny.
fascinating. But also you said in the book that you have a thing called a Chopra family plan, which involved preparation, logical thought, and strategy, right? This is the Chopra family plan. Did you use this Chopra family plan to make a career in Hollywood, or did that happen just by accident? Because I heard you first went there to do. I read that you first went there to do a music album.
It was planned and sort of also happened. My whole life feels almost like destiny has a plan for me, but I recognize opportunities. I'm not someone who lets an opportunity go by.
Hmm.
Whether it's a meeting, whether it's someone I meet, or whether it's someone who says something to me. And I remember being curious about seeking work in the West. I was at a point in my work in Bollywood where I wanted to expand my wings. I wanted to do work that made me feel challenged. And when I went to do music was something I've always loved. When I went to do music in the States, music and movies are all very intermixed. So when
Right.
you're going to the
Yeah.
parties, you're meeting musicians and actors and directors, like it's all the same industry almost. So while I was doing music over there, which I creatively thought that I was failing at myself, I didn't end up making the kind of music that I thought was made a dent. And I was struggling with what I wanted to do, and few people told me that you should seek representation in America. And I asked why do they think that? Because I was doing a lot of work in America and in India, and I knew it would take away time. And you know how a female actor's career is in India. अगर आपके पास वक्त नहीं होगा, आप फिल्में नहीं कर सकते हो, तो फिर कोई और कर लेगा. So there was always that thought of, oh my gosh, should I take a risk of not doing the 4 films that you have to
It
do to
was, yeah, yeah,
survive?
yeah.
Um,
I
but I
I
guess I'm a
noticed that.
gambler.
But I noticed that keeping a career alive on 3 continents is not easy. So if you stay in Hollywood, Europe forgets you. Stay in Europe, both forget you, Bollywood and Hollywood.
Absolutely.
So you
I
have to
guess
do a
I'm
bit of
lucky
a
that I guess
conjuring
I'm lucky.
act
Totally.
of trying
But
to look as though you're everywhere at once at the same time. Uh,
Kabir sir, I have to say, like the internet and being able to live in this age of information has really made
yes,
that possible. Like right now, I've worked in India and I've worked in America simultaneously for the last like 10 years. And I didn't feel the need for them to be mutually exclusive. I did
right.
films here and I did films there. I flew down back and forth continents. And I think that may have been the difference between like your time to not live in this age of information.
Absolutely. Huge difference. Huge difference. Huge difference. I
Absolutely.
mean, there, those days you had to book a telephone call. The fastest form of communication was the fax, you know. And
Wow.
it
Imagine.
was, I remember a person coming to me in LA in the early 90s saying, Mr. Bedi, have you heard of this thing called email? You push a button here and it is there. You push a button here, it is there in India. So it was. We've lived through those times.
And
But
technology really has changed the game in, for entertainment. But listen, before I run out of time, I want to definitely ask you about the Beatles thing. So the
okay,
Beatles at that time, 60s, 70s, I mean, the Beatles. And just you got to interview them. What was that like? You were a kid.
I was a cub reporter working for All India Radio, trying to pay my way through college by making
And
some
why did
money
they
on the
choose
side.
you? Like, why were they like, yeah, this guy is right to interview the Beatles? Like,
Well, because most people in All India Radio didn't know who the Beatles were. Um, I was their crazy fan, and I thought if I get a gig to interview them, that'll be great. So I went to my boss and I said, please give me a tape recorder, allow me to interview the Beatles. They laughed me off. They said, the whole Delhi press corps is trying to get in. How are you going to get in? I said, I will. Just give me the tape recorder. I'll do
wow.
my best. I got this tape recorder, and being a Beatles fan, I knew that I had to get through to their manager. And everyone was trying to chase the Beatles. I stalked out the manager, found him out. I knew his vulnerability because they'd just been in Philippines and they had a big problem there with the government. And I told him I was from the government, and the government had scheduled an interview, and they'd get into a lot of trouble if they didn't do the interview. So I finagled my way into that interview. Actually, he agreed to give the interview. The boys will not give the interview. I will do the interview. I said, fine. So when I went to see him, he just wasn't well. So he walked me across the length of the floor and said, boys, do me a favor, give this guy an interview. And I got the interview with the Beatles. So
Wow. You were
that
a
was,
hustler.
well, you
You
had to be a little smart. You had to be a little smart. You had to, you
see,
couldn't
that's what
just
I
walk
mean
in.
about recognizing opportunity
That's right. That's right. I
and
did,
creating it for yourself.
and that interview and the way All India Radio treated it afterwards led to such disillusionment within me that it caused me to leave Delhi, come to Bombay, begin a career in advertising, which led to career in theatre, which led to films. So that was one of the great pivotal moments of my life, and changed the course of my life, because then from Bollywood, of course, I got the Sandokan series in Europe, and that made huge waves out there and made me a big star on the continent. So little things can have enormously large consequences, um, as we've
I
seen
remember
in both our
images
lives.
of you being, and as a kid, I remember this, of all of these like European fans running after you, and like in Spain specifically, like people when you're getting into
Right.
your car, people were like, ah, it was incredible to see. Like when I talk about actors before me from India who've been able to, make the dent and hence pave the way for me to be able to demand the kind of roles that I want to do, because and you're the pioneer of that. So thank you for paving the way for us and actors like me
Thank you.
who are seeking the work internationally. Um,
Thank you, and thank you for coming and honoring me by this book launch. And as one debut author to another, I thank you for launching my book. It's a book about the making, breaking, and remaking of me as a man. It's an emotional story, and I'd like people to read it and share it. And before you step out of the program, I just want to say a big hello to Nick and to Madhuji, who I care about a lot. I met you both at your wedding with Nick when you invited me to the reception. So I have fond memories of that.
I will
And
definitely tell him. He's outside so that we are not disturbed, but I will tell him that. And my mom will probably faint. So
no. Please get a big hug from me. And thank you so much, Priyanka, for coming and sharing this wonderful day and occasion with me.
So, Priyanka, thank you very much for
Hi,
this
Faridoon.
amazing.
How are you?
I'm very well. How are you?
I'm all right. Good to see you again.
Good to see you as well. Fabulous conversation that you just had with Mr. Bedi. You know, I have one question for you, having known you for such a long time. You actually read the book for this launch. Many people would not do that, maybe because the sort of paucity of time that you're having. And you've always taken these things very seriously, that aap jo bhi karte ho, you are totally immersed into it. How important has this quality been in your success?
I mean, मेरे लिए बहुत जरूरी है, and especially I feel like I think it's disrespectful if you come on to a job and you don't know what you're talking about, or if you don't know what you're doing. And disrespect is something I can't tolerate. And कबीर सर के साथ इतने सालों से काम किया है, जानती हूँ मैं, उनकी पूरी फैमिली को जानती हूँ, पूजा को बड़ी अच्छी तरह से जानती हूँ. And I just think that he's a man I'm very curious about, and I know his story has been written about for such a long time, but to read a story from in his own words was important to me. Plus also, it doesn't take very long to put in the effort, and it really irritates me when people don't. So I'm glad that I have a work ethic that allows me to be different like that.
Right. And now, having written a book yourself, how difficult is it to just decide that what is it that maybe you don't want to keep in the book?
For me, what was very important in my book was I wanted it to be about my journey, and just my perspective. And what I did not want was anything salacious, anything that would give your columns a lot of days of writing about. So I just wanted it to be about my journey, my emotional growth as a woman. So that was one thing. And second of all, if it's boring, then I didn't want to keep it in the book. So I wrote a much larger book, and then I edited out things that I didn't think were important enough. Maybe I'll keep it for the second one.
What do you think has been the biggest achievement for you so far?
What my biggest achievement, I guess, when for anybody who's working outside of their own home country, I built a career in my home country that has given me, people reacting to my art. But I think what to me feels like the biggest achievement is just people actually knowing my work abroad, and like actually talking to me as an artist and appreciating my soul as an artist, and not just the popularity contest. When I walk into a room, people know the work that I have done, and I think that is a big achievement. Winning a popularity contest as an actor, whether you're in Bollywood or Hollywood, has never been the name of the game for me. I'm an artist and I have a point of view, and I think knowing that people give me respect for what I bring to the table is that is, I think, my biggest achievement.
Kabir sir said something that once he started off, be it Europe as well as Hollywood, Indian artists, they were generally considered, that they have to be from some other nationalities. Just getting an Indian to play a character was not really in vogue at that point of time. Now, with you just producing a wonderful film in the White Tiger, the BAFTAs and Oscars, and the way it is moving across, it's something which is really, really interesting. So, how important has it been for you to just for your personal roots to get recognized in the West?
To me, it's most important because जब मैं आई थी यहाँ पे, तो फिर I wanted to do mainstream work. I had enjoyed being a mainstream actress in India. I know what I bring to the table when I join a film. I know my job, and I didn't want to just be a stereotype or a sidekick in big movies. I wanted my face on a poster, and that was such a struggle when I first started looking for work in America. And this is what 6-7 years ago I'm talking about. It was like people didn't understand that concept in a really big way. Those movies always ended up becoming like niche movies or independent movies. They were never like ye mainstream film hai. So when like I was telling Kabir sir, even when I joined movies or started working in America, I had to shed unfortunately my Indianness, so that the globe sort of understood that, okay, there's this person who's an artist. It wasn't too alien. But once I got their attention, then I pivoted back to educating people. And that is a very big quest of mine, is to educate the world about the industry that we come from, the fact that Indians have the ability to stand shoulder to shoulder to anyone of any ethnicity within any industry. And, for us to have guts and courage and demand the change that we need, instead of being invisible, like we are usually taught, ki, acha, problems mat karna, kuch bolna nahi. I'm not that person, and I encourage people to come out there and let's show the world, what we're capable of. And the White Tiger was a big example of that. And I'm continuing in that way of collaborating with a lot of Indian talent, and bringing and producing work in Hollywood, which will be helmed by Indian talent, written by Indian talent, and that's just my quest now.
One of the things that I really respected about the book and Kabir sir was, after reading the book, was that he has at least 2 chapters in his life. One is with Parveen Babi and one is with Siddharth, where he talks about the mental issues in a very sensitive manner. What do you think is the importance of having a conversation around mental health and normalizing it?
I think it's absolutely important. I think, like Kabir sir said, the stigma exists in a really big way. And I think, the brain is an organ, just like the kidneys, just like the heart. If we have an issue with your heart, you go see a doctor, right? So the same way, it's as simple as that to educate people that your brain is also an organ. And we know hardly anything about how the brain works. Like even in the medical field, we're just about learning ourselves. So I think it's really important to give credence to the fact that this is a real thing. And as a society, for us to be able to support people, who are dealing with mental health problems. And I think that'll only happen with conversation. And I'm really glad you asked this question. And I'm really glad, Kabir, so you addressed that in your book, because you went through such a painful period with your son. And, and as a parent and as a family, like, I think it's really important that you had that conversation too. So it's great.
Let me end on a more positive note here and say congratulations on having acted in, produced The White Tiger, which is Oscar nominated for a Best Adapted Screenplay. It's a huge achievement. I loved the film, and I congratulate you for making it. And I congratulate you also on Unfinished, your great book, which should be read by everybody too. So thank you for many things, Priyanka, and above all for launching my book.
Thank you, Faridoon.
And Priyanka, thank you very much. Thanks a lot.
So good to see you. Go get it.
Good to see you. Kabir sir, congratulations. I think that was a wonderful book launch, and it's so amazing that Priyanka, being so busy, but she has found the time and she has read the book, and she had such wonderful questions for you. So huge congratulations, sir, and I'm sure that everyone who's going to be reading this book, they're going to be mesmerized. So I have a small request. If you can please read some excerpts from the book, that'll be really amazing, sir.
I will certainly do that. I thought you'd ask me, therefore I came prepared, in the sense that while my book is very much here in my hand, I'm not going to read physically from the book. I'm going to read off the computer screen because that's easier. Otherwise, you'll be looking at the top of my head a lot of the time. So I'll make it easier for everybody by reading from a chapter called Baba and Frida, which is the story of my parents. My father was called Baba, my mother was called Frida. My book is full of emotional stories, and this is an emotional moment in their story. And they were remarkable people in so many ways. And I will give you a sense of that as I read from the chapter, Baba and Frida. But the story of Baba and Frida's controversial love and marriage in Oxford and their sacrifices for India's independence is as amazing as any I've heard. For all his rugged charm, my father hadn't made the most alluring of proposals. I have nothing to offer you but love and this companionship that I think we both feel. I'm a member of the Indian national movement. For all I know, you might have to spend years of our marriage waiting outside jail walls. But I love you with all my heart. Will you please marry me? Frida had resolved her conflicting loyalties during their courtship. She loved England, but she loathed colonialism. She replied to his proposal without hesitation. Yes, whatever the future brings, we will share it together. These simple words sealed their engagement and her commitment to India's freedom struggle. Baba's decision to marry Frida upset the Bedi family in India. Baba and his elder brother T.D. Bedi were like characters in a Bollywood film, bonded as brothers, yet like on opposite sides of the law. T.D. was a magistrate who hoped Baba would follow him into the British Indian civil service. So he wasn't happy that his brother was not only returning as a nationalistic revolutionary, but, pitemu, with an English bride in tow. He sent Baba a fervent letter to change his mind on marrying her. That letter has been lost. Fortunately, Frida's reply to TD, found by his son Inder Bedi, tells us everything. It amazes me that my mother wrote it when she was just 21 years old. I quote what matters most. Dear brother, I know how it must seem to you when your dearly loved brother makes a decision to marry someone who is a stranger to your land, to your family, and to your race. As you love your brother Baba, so I love your brother. But you are man, and I am woman. And while our love and its strength must be the same at the core, for me, there is also another complexion to it. In Baba, I see the father of my children, and I tremble to the passion of tenderness when I think that one day I shall suckle his son at my breast. None but the finest children could be born of the spirit which unites us and the strength of our bodies. I can never be an Indian woman and cannot give him pure children. Would that alone prejudice you against them? Baba and I are one country in spirit. When I loved Baba first, it was not for the first time. We came together out of space. We have loved before, and after this, we shall love again. I was not brought up in an easy school. I do not ask ease from the future. I want to serve, and serve as best a woman can by the side of her husband and children. I repeat, there is one thing I cannot do, and that is become an actual Indian woman. But my spirit is with India, not with England, with Baba, and not a man of my own country. My children will be an even greater bond. Will you deny me your perfect understanding for something which I cannot help? It just happened that my soul is not in my country, but in another. Your sister, Frida. Her letter moved the Bedi family, and they blessed their wedding. It was raining on the day they married at the Oxford Registry Office, 21st June 1933. Frida was a porcelain beauty of 22. Baba was a ruggedly handsome 24. It was the first marriage between an Indian and British fellow student at Oxford. Neither of them could afford a big party or any fuss. Both were on scholarships. A well-worn newspaper photograph shows my father chivalrously holding an umbrella over my mother in a long white dress with a corsage of flowers as they emerged from the registry. It was the last time my mother wore Western clothes. The story continues because beyond my mother's coming to India, she joined India's freedom struggle with my father. He was a communist. She became a Gandhian Satyagrahi. She went on from there to become the highest ranked Tibetan Buddhist nun in the world. And my father, who was a communist revolutionary, ended up becoming a philosopher in Italy. How that happened to such remarkable people is is one of the chapters of my book. And the fact that they were my parents makes me even more grateful to the universe for giving me such remarkable people to bring me into the world. So this is a small extract from the chapter on my parents, Baba and Frida, from my book, Stories I Must Tell, The Emotional Life of an Actor.
That is absolutely riveting. And I think that letter is something so amazing. And as I just mentioned you earlier, sir, as well, there are several letters that you have included in the book, which are really amazing. And hats off to you and your family for retaining those manuscripts. That is truly commendable. Kabir sir, it has been an honor just collaborating with you on this wonderful journey of your autobiography. The stories I
Thank you,
must tell.
Faridoon. You've been extremely helpful. You've been extremely helpful and very supportive of whatever I've done. I was touched to the core that you found my book revelatory and you found it interesting. So I really thank you for all you've done in helping spread awareness about my book, because at the end of the day, what every writer wants is for people to read his book. And for me, when I'm telling my life story, which I've written with such passion over the last year, to get it out there is one of my greatest ambitions. And thank you for helping me in that. Thank you very
So
much.
it has been an honor, and honestly, it has been a learning experience. This book, reading this book, has been a learning experience. So I must thank you for that as well. So congratulations, sir, for this wonderful book launch, and I'm sure that it's going to be read by lakhs of people all across the world. So please just brace yourself for all the hangama that is coming your way.
Right, right. As आपके मुंह में घी शक्कर, as we say. आपके मुंह
Thank
में
you
घी
so much, sir.
शक्कर.
Thank you
Thanks,
so much.
Faridoon.
Thank you, man.
Bye.
Thanks a lot. Thank you.